In today's fragmented media landscape, nothing drives results like local media, and Locality is proving it. Locality's Local X platform is redefining local video advertising by centralizing premium streaming solutions into a simple, data-driven workflow. Local X puts real-time planning, scalable reach, and measurable results at your fingertips. Discover how Local X makes planning local media fast, easy, and intuitive at locality.com/localx.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age, and welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief Podcast, our weekly discussion about marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. As consumers expect more authenticity and legitimacy from their products, in the beauty industry in particular, many brands are turning to science and healthcare for backing. That's the case with Scene, a hair care brand that has its founding roots in dermatology. The brand recently hired Linh Peters, who was most recently Chief Marketing Officer at Walgreens, as its CMO. Today, we'll be talking with Linh about why she joined Scene, how the brand measures up to the competition in the crowded beauty and hair care space, and what's in store for it in 2026. Now, here's my conversation with Linh. Hi, Linh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Adrienne. I'm incredibly excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we've talked many times before, most recently when you were CMO at Walgreens, but you just joined Scene this fall. Can you tell me a little bit about why this role was a fit for you and how your background prepared you for it?
Yes, happy to. So I have spent my entire career transforming brands, places like Target, Starbucks, as you mentioned, Walgreens, Calvin Klein. And so working in those organizations, I had incredible opportunities to help turn marketing into a growth engine. And so for me, what really drew me to Scene is the fact that I get the chance to build something from the ground up that actually changes how people think about, hair care and beauty. And I would say as a marketer, you don't get that many chances in your career to be able to, help a brand do that.
Yeah, you have this incredible background that gives you all this experience to come in and help build something from the ground up. So let's talk a bit about Scene. What is it and how is it different from what's already in the marketplace? Because I wasn't familiar with it until I heard that you had joined.
Yes, I would say that we are a brand. We've been around for about 5 years. We were actually started by Dr. Aris Rubin. So Dr. Rubin is a Harvard-trained dermatologist, and she, is very much a scientist and an innovator at heart. And just from her own personal journey, she had always suffered from very sensitive skin. And so over the years, she had kind of been a guinea pig, and she had, tested different products. And as she tried them, she would very much like write things down and sort of like the impact that it had on her skin. And so over time, she realized that everything that touches your hair actually touches your skin. And so I think as a consumer, I don't think you realize, right, that the products that you use either to clean your hair or to style your hair, all of that eventually like rinses onto your body. And so for people that have sensitive skin or conditions like eczema or psoriasis, I don't think they realize that that's actually the cause of some of the issues that they're having. And so for Aris, it was just a personal passion of hers that she really wanted to create a product that was non-comedogenic, safe for skin, science-backed, and really had dermatology credibility behind it. I'm sure you know this, but I think the beauty industry is an industry where actually like there's not a ton of regulation, right? So I think products can get created essentially like in your garage and people can just sell things. And so I think for Aris, it was really important to create a product that actually was effective, but also did not create additional issues for consumers. So for me, it's just like, it's such a different product. I truly believe that we are a category of one. And so the opportunity to tell the story, to get the product in more hands of the consumers, that's what I'm really excited about.
Are you the first chief marketing officer at Scene?
I am the first chief marketing officer at Scene. And so I think we've been able to grow the brand really through word of mouth and a lot of effort in terms of just like performance marketing. And so the opportunity for us now is really to be able to do much more on the brand and storytelling front.
So yeah, I was going to say, I think I read that you were tasked with leading Scene into the next era. What does that mean for you? Like, what was your first order of business when you joined, and what are you planning currently? Because it does seem like there's a lot of room to grow.
There is definitely a lot of room to grow. I think for me, it's been really amazing to come into the organization. We have, our employees, Dr. Rubin, and then our CEO, like they are incredibly passionate about the company. And so I think for me, being surrounded by people that are very passionate about the brand, I think is really important. But really for us, we have built this brand, we have built this community. And so we just have to, figure out a way to turn that community into evangelism, right? We've created a lot of believers, I think, across both our consumers. Also, we have 8,500 healthcare professionals that sample seen. And so they are a part of our community network. And so my first order is to figure out, we have amazing customers, we have amazing experiences that customers have shared with us. So how do we take all of that advocacy and loyalty and turn it into an engine of growth for the organization?
So how do you do that? What are some of, I mean, it feels like one of the biggest challenges is how crowded the beauty industry, the skincare, hair care, all of it is
Absolutely.
incredibly crowded. And so how are you battling that, and how are you using these stories, building the community using these stories of loyalty to get the word out and create more?
Yes. So I would say there's a few things that I'm doing. So number one, I think really sharpening our brand positioning. So we are one of the only brands from a hair care perspective that is dermatologist developed and science backed. So that is a huge differentiator for us. So making sure that we lead with that in all of our, messaging and creative and storytelling. The other piece is that because we have that element of us that's different than other brands, we also need to balance that with what I would consider to be like more emotional resonance. So I think when you think about beauty, right, obviously it is very much about making people feel good and look good. And so just making sure that when we talk about our product, that it's not solely focused on, product attributes and, like product marketing, right? That there is really an emotion and sort of like a resonance behind it in terms of how we talk to our customers. I would also say that we haven't really activated our community. So whether that is our consumers or even just like our influencers and who we partner with, I think there's a huge opportunity to really think more strategically about influencers and content and UGC that I think expands our ability to reach more audiences. So we've been very, very narrowly focused, I would say, like on beauty and hair care. But when you think about, influencers and who has engaging audiences, that runs the gamut, right? In terms of, everything from influencers, but also how do we think about partners in the space of like, music and culture and, sort of like that element of it as well.
Are you guys selling direct to consumer as well as wholesale, or where can we find you?
Right. So you can find us really in three main channels. So we have direct to consumer, we have Amazon, and then we also are an exclusive partner with Ulta Beauty. So we are in April, we will be with them for a year. And they've been a tremendous partner for us in terms of helping us reach consumers, but also reach net new consumers that might not have, like you said, been able to find us from a DTC perspective.
And speaking about marketing under your leadership, as the first CMO, are you hiring a new marketing team or kind of bolstering the internal department that was already there? How are you preparing for this growth that you're planning?
Yes, that's a great question. So for me, we actually are hiring for a new marketing team. We have some really fantastic leaders that are heading up specific functions within marketing in terms of performance and loyalty. But we, again, because it wasn't necessarily how we went to market previously, revamping the marketing organization. So this means like a new head of brand marketing, creative or team that I'm building out, as well as I think more strategic oversight on the influencer and social media front. So, like when I think about marketing and sort of like the levers that we can pull, all four of those departments are incredibly important in terms of like how we, tell our story and how we, drive more new to brand. And I would say just like more conversion and retention as well.
What channels do you think are you guys on, or where do you see yourselves in terms of marketing channels? Like, I mean, social, you mentioned influencers. Do you think you might do TV and print?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I would say that I think just based on kind of where we are in our trajectory, I think it's really focusing on influencer, social, I think community in the sense of, how do we create events or experiential components? Because I think this, like with beauty, like a lot of it is just like touching and feeling the product and experiencing it, right? So I think how do you make sure that we're able to translate that, to our customers? And so I think those three things are incredibly important. I think we have opportunity to, test some new innovative platforms, right? So I think you hear a lot about, things like live selling. I think you hear a lot about like, TikTok shop. So how do we just make sure that we are testing and learning our way into some of those platforms where, our consumers, especially on the beauty front, they are so knowledgeable and they are so, smart in terms of how they want to engage with brands. So us being able to, innovate a little bit more, I think it's some of those new platforms, I think will be really important as well.
And you mentioned when you were talking about hiring, you mentioned hiring internally for your creative department. Do you guys work with a creative agency at all, or what are your relationships with external shops?
We don't currently have an agency of record. We have like a roster of freelancers that we've used. And so I think for me, I think there is some beauty, right, in terms of having external partners, speed to market, I think creativity and innovation. I also think that it's really important to have an agency or partner that really understands your brand. And so I think it's a little bit of a balance of both. Having somebody internal who is helping to drive strategic vision, but then being able to have a thought partner on the agency side to really help us, kind of push our thinking and think more broadly in terms of, brand and marketing. I think that's an important piece and I'm going to be putting into place as well.
So are you looking for an external thought partner to help with that?
We are looking for an external thought partner. And I think we're kind of in the stages right now of, strategic planning for next year. And so we've been thinking about like, what does that partnership look like? I know, obviously there's been so many changes on the agency front. And I think there's a lot of also like, new independence kind of brewing. And I think a lot of, incredibly seasoned agency leaders that have kind of gone out on their own. So I think from a brand perspective, it's kind of an exciting time to think about, creativity and who your partner might be, because I think, the model is changing. So I think we just have to, be really open to understanding who that partner might be for us.
What about for the holidays? I mean, I know it's early days for you and for the team you're building, but the holidays are around the corner and beauty is a big one, hair care, everybody has all these parties to attend. So are you
Yes.
guys planning anything marketing wise for the coming couple months?
It's a great question. And I would say that it's kind of funny. I was talking to my team the other day and I know that holidays already launched for most brands, right? I think it's like, it's a little bit nuts this year. I think for us for holiday, because it's a little bit of a transition moment for me and for the team, I think we have a strong story for holiday, right? Which is really around confidence and gifting yourself that gift or, gifting your friends and your loved ones. We don't have anything necessarily planned from, I think, like a broader like experience or event perspective, but we do have a really strong 360 plan that we have in place, right? To make sure that we're thinking about how we show up across all of our different sales channels, as well as I think just on our own, channels as well.
Like a Black Friday
Yes,
kind
yes,
of
of
deal,
course,
that
yes.
kind of thing,
We're
deal,
absolutely playing
promotion.
in, yep, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I think, all of the events that people are planning. I think the other piece is for us, like our Amazon business is, exceptionally strong. So I think just making sure that we are being strategic about how we partner with a partner like Amazon or even Ulta to make sure that we are complementary to, the things that they might have as well.
Are you guys using AI at all for marketing, for retail operations, for some of those sales and customer fulfillment? I feel like I'm asking everyone that, but it is such a hot topic that I think a lot of CMOs are exploring.
Absolutely. I think we are definitely using AI from a marketing standpoint. So everything from, how we build creative to how we execute and almost like production on the production front. So I think there's a huge opportunity. I think the other piece that we're looking at for AI that might be, specific to us is that because we are a science-backed brand, we do a tremendous amount of testing on our products. And so there is an element of, regulatory and compliance that we are hold ourselves accountable to. So when you think about sort of like managing that at scale in terms of all of our creative, all of our marketing and copy, it's a pretty big undertaking. So we're even thinking about, how do we just implement AI and tools to help us better manage that process and cut down, sort of the review time, like increase speed to market and just make sure that from a legal regulatory standpoint that we are holding ourselves accountable to those guidelines.
Let's take a quick break.
Simplify your local media planning with Locality's Local X, the only platform that centralizes local streaming planning and buying into one powerful interface. Local X offers real-time status tracking, cross-platform attribution, and geo-targeted insights, helping advertisers cut through the noise and connect with local viewers at scale. Local X is where local meets scale, intelligence, and results. Visit locality.com/localx.
Welcome back. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about overall retail industry trends. Of course, recent layoffs and tariffs have created a lot of price pressure for consumers and for brands. Do you think we'll see a pullback during the holidays in terms of how people are shopping or how much they're spending, where they're shopping? What are you seeing? What are you expecting?
I would absolutely expect to see, I think consumer demand down. I think it's really hard. I think if you look at, sort of all the things that are happening from, like you said, tariff standpoint, economic standpoint, I think it's a really challenging environment right now for consumers. And so I think they will definitely, I think, pull back. I think it'll be interesting to see where they actually shift their spend. Because I think, in terms of like, what we're seeing, we are not necessarily, seeing a pullback from our spend. I think people are just, I think, being much more strategic and thoughtful about, sort of, where they're spending their money. I was actually reading an article the other day that was really interesting. It was talking about how consumers are trying to make their products last longer, right? So they are diluting products. They are trying to figure out like how to just like use less of what they have. And obviously that, does impact sales and demand. But I just think like, the brands that are going to win in this space, it's not just necessarily about promotion. I think it's also about making sure that you're communicating the value of your product. And so for us, I feel like we do have a differentiator because some of our products, like we can actually claim that you can go like longer days without washing your hair, right? And so it's almost like performance, I think, of your product will become incredibly important. And I think making sure that you communicate that value and the performance of your product and brand, I think will just be table stakes.
Yeah, that's a great one to tell people about that you can wash your hair less. Nobody likes washing their
No,
hair
no,
that much. I mean,
right,
it can be
exactly.
tedious, but also if you're paying for this product and then that it
Mhm.
can help you, it can make your life easier and really promote that value equation.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about the marketing for holidays? I mean, there's always this question every year. It's promotional versus emotional, or we see a bit of both, but it's like it feels like the lever is always kind of leaning one way. It's a little early, but a lot of the campaigns have come out. I feel like I've seen both, but it feels like people want promotions, but it's also that this emotional need for happiness, for happier times, for
Mhm.
nostalgia, for better times. Well, what are you seeing? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think I would echo what you're saying, right? I think people are definitely leading with promotion. I mean, that's what I've seen. And it's really interesting to see that so early now, right? Because we just entered November and holiday obviously is going to be a long, it's a marathon for us. So I would definitely say that I think promotions, I think people will expect, and I think I see a lot of brands going out there with that. I think with the emotion piece, I agree with you. I think people, especially during this time when it feels uncertain, when things feel really stressful, I think people do want to be entertained. I think they do want to find joy. And so it will be interesting to see which brands do that and do that well. I think you always have the brands that I think focus on that area, right? And that kind of that's their kind of that's how they show up during holiday. But I do feel like it will be more important now that I think brands focus on the emotional piece of it, the joy, because I think honestly, I think as consumers, we all need it.
Yeah, I still remember some of the pandemic era marketing that came out that really hit home like years later. I still remember
Hmm.
it as being so strong because of the time
Hmm.
that we were all experiencing. Are there any campaigns you've seen or holiday or otherwise from brands that are really resonating? Is there anybody doing a particularly good job right now from a brand marketing perspective that you've noticed?
I would say that Walmart is doing a really fantastic job. I would say that I think on a couple of fronts, what I really commend them for is that they have an incredibly strong narrative. that shows up in everything that they do, right? So whether it is TV or digital or, social, it is very clear what they are trying to communicate. And I think they're trying to communicate value and access and convenience in a way that they haven't done before. I think previously they were known very much for price, right? If you think about like Walmart where they were playing, and then you had Amazon that was very focused on, convenience. I think Walmart has a very holistic story around kind of, price, value, access, convenience. And I love the fact that, they had the gentleman from White Lotus because who's, not what you'd expect to be a spokesperson, but it feels very natural to the brand. And I think it, is bringing in, a new audience, a new consumer, right? Based on that show and kind of who that resonates with. So I feel like they've done a really nice job, and I'll actually be interested to see how they show up for holiday because I feel like they've usually are one of those brands that I think does a really nice job. I think of, like you said, kind of balancing the promotion and the value piece of it with really kind of the storytelling and the content.
And here's a question I'm asking every CMO I talk to these days. What are you most concerned about as a marketer as we head into 2026?
Oh
What are your
gosh.
what are your priorities? What are you concerned about? What do you think the industry is heading?
I mean, I would say, I think number one, just the ongoing consumer uneasiness, right? So whether that is related to the economy or tariffs or politics, I feel like everyone is exhausted, right? And everyone is stressed out. And that's, I think, as a marketer and as a CMO, that's never a good thing, right? Because I think you're constantly having to be ahead of the game. I think you're constantly having to predict and kind of like figure out like, okay, where do we think the consumer is headed, or how do we think this will impact our business? So I think as a CMO, like I am very much thinking about kind of like the system, right? Sort of like a systems thinking approach to everything. Like there's nothing that kind of works in a silo anymore, right? Like I think as a CMO, you need to make sure that you understand every part of the business and all of the implications, and making sure that, you're at the forefront of, thinking through how that shows up from a marketing perspective, a customer experience standpoint. So that's number one. I think the other piece is, like as you mentioned, AI. I still fundamentally believe that we are still a lot in panic mode. I still think people, for the most part, are still trying to figure things out. I don't know that a lot of brands have figured out the balance of how to leverage AI, but also how to, kind of figure out, how to be much more effective and efficient, but at the same time, maintain creativity and innovation. So I think a lot of brands are still trying to, play that out. Honestly, from a marketing standpoint, and I think we talk a lot about, like CMOs, right, and tenures and marketing, and does it matter? I think that's going to continue to be questioned, right? I think just like you think about just what's happening in the industry, right, with like on the agency side, so consolidation. I think a lot of, agencies are closing. I think a lot of organizations are trying to figure out what the role of marketing is in an organization. And I think there's just a lot of, I think, again, uneasiness, and I think not sure of what the role of marketing will be. And so I think for me, one of the things that I'm really focused on as a marketer is that it's really important, I think, for CMOs to really focus on being value creators, right? So there is this notion of like we have to drive creativity, but also like commercialization. And so I think just making sure that you are balancing those two and really thinking through like what needs to happen to be true to that, I think will be really important for CMOs in 26.
Well, we are out of time. Lynn, thank you so much for joining us.
It was wonderful to spend some time with you today, Adrian. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
That was Lynn Peters, Chief Marketing Officer of Scene, and I'm Adrienne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Tiardio, and invite you to subscribe to the Marketer's Brief podcast on your favorite player. We promise to keep it brief, or at least short enough for your morning coffee. Thanks for tuning in.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.